what are JavaScript objects and the different methods to define them. So before we begin, let's have a look at today's agenda. So first we will discuss about JavaScript objects and how you can create new objects in JavaScript. Then we will move on to have a look at the different JavaScript object properties and then the methods. And then we will see how accessors and prototypes are used as JavaScript objects or to define JavaScript objects. Don't forget to subscribe to Edureka's YouTube channel and stay connected. Now talking about JavaScript objects, these are very similar to objects in real life, which consists of different attributes and properties. Now these objects are defined as an unordered collection of related data that are of primitive or reference types. Now these objects are defined in the form of key-value pairs. So here you can see that we have a car as our object, and the different properties of this particular object can be defined as the company or the model of the car, or what is the color or the year when it was introduced. So you have one particular object that holds different properties. Now these keys are the variables or functions which are called as properties and methods of an object. So now let's see what is the syntax to create an object. So first we take the let keyword and you define any particular object name here. And then inside your object name you have to define certain properties of your particular object. So for example, you have any object and for this you have the first property. I will define it as property 1 and then you have colon and the value of your property. So here I'll define the value for my first property. And in the same way you can add more such properties. So for example, I have another property as property 2 colon I have another value defined here. And in the same way you can add more such properties. So this is how you define your object in JavaScript. You provide a name to your object and then you add any properties related to your object. Now there are three different methods to create an object. You can either use the object literal or you can use the instance of object and finally the constructor method. So these are the three different methods with the help of which you can create any new object in JavaScript. So let's move on and see how these three methods are used. So now the first method is by the object literal. Now the syntax for using the object literal is all you need to do is just specify your object and then provide the properties along with their values inside the curly braces. So first I have property 1 colon value. So I'm specifying the value to my first property. And then I have the second property for which I will specify another value and so on. So this is an easy way with the help of object literal where all you need to do is just specify the object and inside the curly braces you can provide number of properties and their values with the help of a colon. Now this was the syntax, so let's take an example and see how you can use this. So here I have an example where you can use this object literal to create an object. So all you need to do is first you have the object name here. My object name is employee and inside this I have passed different properties along with their values. So for the employee I have an ID number. Here the value for the ID is 700. Then I have name. I have specified the name here. And then we have the salary as well where I have specified the salary after the property. Now let me save this. And now when we run this, you can see that the output is 700 EVAN 30,000. So it provides me the three different values that I have passed for the three different properties for my object. That is 700 EVAN and 30,000. So here my object was employee and for employee I wanted to get the particular properties. That is the ID, the name and the salary. Now this was the first method of creating the object by the help of the object literal. The next method was by creating instance of object. Now talking about instance of object, the syntax is quite simple. Now all you have to do is define a variable. So here I'll just take the variable name as object name, which is my object. And to create a new object, all I have to do is use the new keyword and then add the object along with the parameters here. So what you're going to do here is create a variable with your object name, and when you want to add any particular new object along with the properties, you just have to use the new keyword here and then add your object along with the properties that you can pass as parameters here. So let's take an example and see how you can do this. So first I will take a variable, that is, I'll name it as employee, and then I'll create a new object here. Now all I have to do is pass the values for my object. So suppose the first thing that I want is the employee ID. So I'll specify the employee ID as emp.id equals to 701, and then I will take the employee name. So emp.name equals to evan, and then I have the salary. So I have emp.salary equals to 30,000. And here I have to change this employee to emp.id and emp.name and finally emp.salary. So what I have done here is, first I have created my object, that is emp, and here I'm adding the objects as an instance. So here I have a keyword as new, and then I have the object method. And inside this I have passed all these values, that is my emp ID, name and salary. Now let's save this. And now when I go back to the website, you can see that the output is 701 evan 30,000. So here I had given the employee ID as 701, name as evan and salary as 30,000. And this is what I've got the output here as. It's the same, just that the methods are different of creating your objects. The first method was just using the object literal. Then in the next one, we saw how we can use an instance of the object here and get the output. Now next up, finally, we will see how you can use the constructor to get the same output. Now talking about constructors, we have the this keyword in JavaScript. Now a function is created with arguments, and each argument value can be assigned in the current object by using this keyword. So let's see how we can use this. Now to create your object with the help of a constructor, first we will create a function and then name it as employee, and then I will pass all my parameters such as ID, name and salary inside this. Now once I've created my function, now this keyword will come into action. So here I will use this keyword as this.id equals to id, which specifies the ID of my employee. Then I have this.name equals to name of my employee, and then this.salary, which points to my salary, that is the salary of the employee. Now once we have done this, now is the time to specify the values for my ID, name and salary. So what I'll do is I'll create another object here and take new employee and pass the values inside this particular parameter. So I'm taking the ID as 702, I'm taking the name as Neha, and then let me specify the salary as 40,000. So these are the values that I've passed inside the parameter, and with the help of this keyword, it points out to these particular values specified for each of these parameters, that is ID, name and salary. So now let's save this. And let's go back to the website and see. Now you can see the output is 702 Neha 40,000. That is, the values for my employee's ID, name and salary are shown here. So this was another method of using the constructor, that is this keyword here. So all we have done is we have taken a function as employee and passed certain parameters, that is ID, name and salary, and with the help of this keyword we have specified the values for all of these parameters. And next we have defined these parameters and added values to them. So for my ID I have added 702, for the name I have Neha, and for salary I have 40,000. And I have just taken the output as my employee ID, employee name and employee salary. So these were three different methods with the help of which you can create a new object in JavaScript. Now talking about the properties, a property of an object is basically a variable that is attached to that particular object. Previously also we have seen how we have defined a car and we have taken the different properties as model, company, year and color. Now they are basically the same as JavaScript variables except for the attachment to objects. Now the properties of an object define the characteristics of the object. Now to get these objects, all you need to do is have the object name. So this is how you access the properties of any particular object. You just need to have the object name and then dot property name. So this will help you access this particular property that you mention here of this particular object that you mention here. It's just a simple dot notation. Now, for example, you have a variable named as car. Here we are creating a new object and we will specify the properties for our object, that is car. So for the first one, we have car.company. So let me take the company name as Ford. And then we have car.color. So let the color be blue. Then we have the car.year. So suppose let the year be 1995. So what happens here is that I have my object as car and then these are all the different properties of my particular object. So all I have to do is take the object name, that is car dot property, which is the company, and assign the value to this. So these are the values of my properties. So Ford is the value of my property company, blue is the value for my property color, and 1995 is the value for my property year. And all of these properties belong to one object, that is car. Now moving on to the JavaScript methods. A method is actually a function associated with an object. It is also a property of an object. So these methods are defined as the normal functions, but they have to be assigned as the property of an object. So simple way to do this is you just have to take the object name dot your method name. It's similar to the property and how you have used the dot notation for accessing your properties. In the same way, all you have to do is take the object name dot your method name and pass the parameters here. So let's see how you can use this method here. So first you have to create an object. So for example, I have taken the object to be person. And now inside this, I'll take the different properties related to my object. So first I'll initialize the first name. So let it be Tessa. And then I have the last name. So let it be Den. And then I have the employee ID to be 700. Now, in order to get the full name for this, I will pass a method or a function through it, such as I'll take the full name and pass a function here. So now how do I get this full name? So for that, I will need the first name plus the last name. So here I have to use the constructor or the this keyword again, so that it should return me the first name along with the last name. So for that, we will take the this keyword here, return this first name plus, and then add a space, and then I will have this dot last name. So this is how you can use the method in order to specify your object properties and get the value with the help of this constructor. So here I've defined the properties separately as first name, last name, and employee ID. And then in order to get the full name, I have used a function, that is I've passed a method, and here the method will return me this particular value. That is, it will take this dot first name, which takes the first name, that is Tessa, and point to the last name, which is Den. So it will give me the output as Tessa Den. So basically this keyword is just used to specify to this particular point. So this dot first time will actually point to your first name and take the value of your property, that is first name, and this dot last name will point to your last name property and take this particular value, and then add it all together and return the full name here. So this is how the method works here. Now talking about some of the commonly used built-in methods, we have object.assign, object.create, and object.define property, or .entries and .freeze. These are some of the commonly used built-in methods in JavaScript. We have many more such built-in methods. Also, you can have your user-defined methods as well whenever you're creating any particular object and adding properties to it. Now next up we have the accessors. Now the JavaScript accessors consist of getters and setters, which are used to define the object accessors. So first let's see how the get keyword is used to get any value of the property. So here I have taken the object as person, and now I'll define the properties. So I have the first name, and I'll just write the name as suppose Daisy. Then I have the last name, and I'll define this as green. Then the next value I would take is the employee ID. So let me specify the employee ID as 401. Now I'll use the get keyword here. So I will take the get keyword and I'll define the function ID here. Now to get this particular ID, I will return the value as this .emp ID. So what happens here is that I have taken this function as ID, and now inside this I'm returning the value as emp ID with the help of this keyword. And here I am getting the value for my person.id. So I have my first name, last name, employee ID. I have used the get keyword to create another function inside which I'm returning the value as employee ID with the help of this keyword. And now I'm taking this document.write as person.id to get the output as the employee ID. So let's save this. And now you can see that the output here is 401 because I've specified the employee ID to be 401. So with the help of this get keyword, we have just created another function and returned the value or the properties value inside this particular function itself. So this was the getter. Now we will see how the setter is used to set any particular value. Now suppose for the same example, I'll take the employee ID as 00 and here I'll set the value. So set ID, and I will set the value as 402. Now we don't need to return anything because we are just setting the value. So all I have to do is use this keyword and set the value. So I'll take this .emp ID. So I'll take the set ID as value, and then I will take this .emp ID is equals to value. So what happens here is that I'm setting a particular value for my emp ID. So for that I'm taking the set keyword and passing a function with the parameter as value. Now I'm pointing to my employee ID and passing this same parameter here, that is value. So now I have to specify a particular value which will be automatically assigned to my employee ID. So for that all I have to do is take my object and use the function that is ID. So I have person.id is equals to 402. So now here I have set the value as 402, which is actually this particular value. So now what will happen is that this particular value will go back and will be set as the value for my employee ID. So all I've done is I've taken the set keyword and used the function as ID and passed a property as value, and here I have used this keyword and passed the employee ID and given the value as value, that is my parameter, same as my function. And finally here I have passed the actual value for this particular parameter. Now once I save this, so now once I go to the website, you can see the output as 402. That is, with the help of this set keyword, all I have done is set the value for my employee ID. That is, this particular property has now got the value as 402. So this was about the accessors in objects. Now next up we will have a look at the prototypes. Now all JavaScript objects inherit prototypes and methods from a prototype. For example, your date objects inherit from your date.prototype, array objects inherit from array.prototype, and so on. Now this JavaScript prototype property is used to add new properties to object constructors. So talking about prototypes, let's see how you can actually define them. Now for the prototypes, the first thing you need to do is create a function. So suppose I have created a function as person. Now inside this, I will pass certain parameters as first, last, and age. So these are the parameters of my function person. So these are just certain parameters that I've passed to my function. So I'll use a constructor here and take the first name and point it out towards the first parameter that I've created, which is first. So the parameter first represents the first name here, and then I'll take this keyword again and create another constructor as last name and point it out to last. And in the same way, this dot age is equals to age. Now what you can do is you can take the help of the prototype and just add another property in your object. So all you'd have to do is take the object name, that is person.prototype, and pass another parameter such as nationality. And you can also pass the value here in the same place. And suppose I have given the nationality as Indian. So see, this is a simple method of using the prototype where you can just take that particular object and create another property for it and also pass the value at the same time. In the first place, we have just taken the function and passed certain parameters, and then we have taken the constructor to point out to these particular parameters and specify their value. And with the help of this prototype, you can just add any other new property that you want to add inside your object. Now the prototype property also allows you to add new methods to objects constructors. Now remember that you can modify your own prototypes but never modify the prototypes of standard JavaScript objects. So these were some of the different ways with the help of which you can define JavaScript objects, and also some of the examples that showed you how you can create new objects as well. So with this, we have come to the end of today's session. Don't forget to let us know about your opinion in the comment section below. Till then, thank you and happy learning.